You know who you are. To the person who recommended this game, screw this game and screw you for recommending it. This is Ian Livingstone's Deathtrap Dungeon for the PlayStation. This game was developed by Asylum Studios and published by Eidos Interactive in 1998. Eidos Interactive, the same company who published the Gex trilogy and Tomb Raider. In fact, this game was often compared to Tomb Raider because it employs a similar 3D gameplay style. But once you see the actual gameplay, and if you actually get to playing it yourself, no. Actually, I'm not. No, this game isn't even worth it. I couldn't even bring myself to play 30 minutes of this crap. Little bit of history behind this game. This was based on the 6th book in Ian Livingstone's fighting fantasy series, specifically the book called Deathtrap Dungeon, hence the name Ian Livingstone's Deathtrap Dungeon. This is an adventure game book series which you'd think would translate awesome into a video game, but no. They absolutely trashed this. You see this bridge right here? See how good that looks? Don't get used to it. Remember that, because that is the best you're gonna see in this game. Even now, as I get used to the controls, I am not aware of the absolute travesty that is waiting for me. I thought the controls and camera for the Phantom Menace were bad. No. This game is like trying to land a ping pong ball into a bucket that's welded to an F-14 traveling at top speed after you've been blindfolded and spun around like a yo-yo for half an hour while drunk. In fact, I'm sure the people at Asylum Studios were drunk themselves when they made this game. Alright, enough ranting about how bad the game is. Let's actually dive into this stupid thing. To start, you have 2 characters to choose from. You have the gorgeous Red Lotus, as the instruction manual calls her, and Chain Dog, who basically looks like a buff Lord Farquaad, complete with the haircut. I chose Red Lotus because I'm a straight white male. I love beautiful women. So after walking into the dungeon and avoiding a bunch of fireballs, you're greeted with a big round room with a bunch of orcs in it. All you have to do is make one swing and they go down like a stack of cards. Or, excuse me, they don't go down, they explode into pieces. Yeah, this is one of those games. So, warning to the squeamish, yes, there will be blood and gore. So the first probably 7 minutes of the game is pretty easy to figure out. One of the orcs in the first room drops a key, you use that key to explore the other rooms, where you're thrown into various puzzles. As soon as I realized that this was a puzzle game, I immediately began dreading the rest of this playthrough. Spoiler alert, I don't end up making it out of this section of the game because I can't figure out what I'm supposed to do or where I'm supposed to go. The first few puzzles are pretty easy to figure out, but then it hits you with... Well, I'll show you when I get there. Most of this video is just gonna be me jumping around like an idiot, trying to figure out what on earth I'm supposed to do. So you go through the first door and you come across these imps that laugh like Beavis from Beavis and Butthead. You slice them up, and then a gate opens and you can go into the next section. In my review of the Phantom Menace, I mentioned how I had to painstakingly rock my character back and forth in order to attack my enemies. It is way worse here, where with most games like this, you can just simply move around with the D-pad. You don't have to painstakingly turn yourself and then move forward like you do here. Even with the Phantom Menace, there are some parts where you could absolutely control where you were going with the analog stick. This game has no analog support, and if you want to turn around, you have to hold whichever direction on the D-pad, painstakingly turn yourself 360 degrees, and then you can go forward. One thing I will give this game credit for, the combat system here is much better defined than it was in the Phantom Menace. Where in the Phantom Menace, you just spam the button. In this game, there are a number of different types of attacks you can pull off, which is way more appealing to me. If only the rest of the game made it worth it. I haven't even talked about the camera yet. Most of the time, the camera just follows you around at a static position. But then there are other times, like just now, where you saw the camera just kind of floated overhead like a bird trying to escape. Yeah, even the camera doesn't want to be a part of this. So you ride the elevator up to an area with more Beavis-looking bungholes. You cut the first one up, then forget that you're supposed to use left and right on the D-pad to turn your character around. This is the part where the game's crap controls started to shine more and more. At this point, I was finally starting to get used to the game's learning curve. But then it hit me with this. The controls on this turd nugget of a game are already bad enough without having to do any real platforming. So then they decide to throw in a labyrinth, which is pretty easy and straightforward, but there's one problem. This game, by this point, was starting to bore me to death. And there's one primary reason for that. They only throw in enough enemies to keep you just entertained enough to keep you from shutting the game off. And bear in mind, I'm only maybe 10 to 15 minutes in by this point, which I don't understand. This game is based on a series of adventure game books, which I compare to roleplay via like Dungeons and Dragons and stuff like that. It's kind of like that. It's an awesome concept for a game. How could you screw it up this bad? How am I this bored in something that should be entertaining me? I would rather go to school than play this game, and that is not a joke. I am dead serious. And by now, you probably noticed that for the last couple of minutes, I've been wandering around like a lost puppy. That's because this game gives you the bare minimum of what you're supposed to do. I mentioned in my Tomb Raider demo that there are some games that hold your hand and some games that don't. Of the games that do not hold your hand, this game is the extreme. This game gives you the bare legal minimum requirement of clues that you could possibly need, like that arrow right there, which blends in with the wall. Other than that, your clues are almost non-existent. You're left to your own wits, which would normally be a good thing. But here, you're left in mazes upon labyrinthian mazes and told nothing. The only indicators you're given are little hints here and there. The random enemies that pop out that tell you, hey, you're going in the right direction or you're doing the right thing. Or the arrows that you'll see embedded in the walls. Or occasionally, you'll see little yellow lines of text at the bottom of your screen giving you a vague hint. They drop you in with no clues, nothing. You're left to your own. Which I can kind of see what they were going for to a point. Because it's supposed to be like you're going through a dungeon. Like if you were actually in real life going through a real dungeon, you would have 0 clues and would be left to your own wits to figure out the puzzles. But this isn't real life. This is a video game, and video games are supposed to be fun. This is not fun, nor is it entertaining. This is the equivalent of being dropped in an escape room that leads to another escape room that leads to another escape room where you have to go through the entire building from the top floor to the bottom all by yourself with no help whatsoever. That's what this feels like. So you finally make it out of that nightmarish hellhole where the next problem you face is a bunch of floating platforms. And this is where the downward spiral of my already dwindling sanity reached the bottom of the toilet bowl. Because this is as far as I was able to make it without completely going nuts. The boredom had already reached its peak by this point, and I had explored the rest of the dungeon multiple times. And eventually, I just straight up gave up and decided to get it over with. What was that? And that's as far as I got, because that's all I had the patience for. 30 minutes of footage, 30 minutes of pain and suffering, 30 minutes of my life I will never get back. No, I am not doing any more of this game. I'm passing this off to a professional. I highly doubt you'll ever hear this, but James Rolfe, Mr. Angry Video Game Nerd, if in the unlikely event you ever watch this video, please review this game so I don't have to. My sanity is already at its lowest point right now. And I don't know if I'd be able to handle any more of this. This is the kind of game that I would have to have a walkthrough holding my hand the entire time. And to do a full review of a game like this while having a walkthrough by my side, I would consider cheating. And I'm not gonna do that. If I play a game, if I do a review of it, I want to be able to know what I'm doing without having to consult a walkthrough for literally every step of the entire game. That's not fair to me, and that's not fair to you guys. I know I use cheat codes a lot in games, but to stoop to the level of using a walkthrough for a game like this, no. I won't stoop that low. That's beyond me. This game could have been good if they had taken more time and done it better. Between the mediocre enemies that come very rarely and die in one hit, the confusing labyrinthian puzzles that have absolutely no rhyme or reason and no seemingly discernible clues. But the worst part of it all, and the one thing beyond anything else that keeps me from being able to go on any further in this game, is the controls. I complained a lot about the controls in The Phantom Menace, but here, good God! This is an all-time low from what I personally have played. This is arguably my least favorite game of all time. Thank you guys for joining me. I love you guys so much, and thank you for putting up with my incessant ranting for the last several minutes. Thank you all, and God bless.